Thank you for joining us today and welcome to the Engage and Amplify Building Community Support for your event. This is a webinar hosted in collaboration with Business Arts and Black Coffee Communications. My name is Shannon Bowler and I am the Executive Director of Culture Days National, and I welcome you all. Thank you for attending. A few housekeeping and reminders just before we begin. You can personally turn on the option for closed captioning below the screen, which will create auto-generated English captions. Now, only the presenters' microphones and cameras will be on today, but please contribute to the chat. Let us know where you're from, where you're tuning in from. We will be hosting a live Q&A at the end of this session. So please use the Q&A box that is also at the bottom of your screen. Please put your questions in there. That's where they're submitted, and that's where we'll be pulling them from. So if you do end up putting one in the chat, maybe please try to remember to put in the Q&A. It might get missed with all of the chat going on. We are always also happy to connect with you further. If you have any questions after this webinar, please feel free to email us at info@culturedays.ca. And yes, today's session will be recorded and it will be available to you soon. If you wish to review it, share it with your colleagues and your network. We will also provide the slide decks and all links to resources that will be made available to you during the session today. And we'll also be making many of the materials available in French as well. So just before we begin, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. On behalf of Culture Days, our network is present and active all across the country, and we do collaborate with a vast array of people, organizations, and communities all across Indigenous territories. Culture Days and our partner organizations are committed to working with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities, seeking to uphold equity for all to participate and supporting a diversity of art forms and cultural expressions. Today, I am speaking to you from the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. This area, now called Toronto, is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and these territories are guided by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. So our goal for today's session is to share some insights into the current context for arts advocacy in Canada, and to provide you with some strategies in how to engage elected officials, community members, local organizations, leaders to help amplify your Culture Days events or your other initiatives to help with reach and impact. I will invite our guest speakers to now come on the screen. I'll do a quick introduction of both of them. So joining us from Business Arts is President and CEO Aubrey Reeves. Aubrey joined Business Arts in 2020, and her role in her role, she continues in her mission to see the arts and culture industry move sustainably into the future. Aubrey has also worked with Culture Days, the Ontario Arts Council, Trinity Square Video, Dance Current Magazine, and has served on the board of Liaison of Independent Filmmakers of Toronto and Dreamwalker Dance Company. Aubrey's also a multidisciplinary artist, so she does possess a unique sense of sensibilities that allow her to champion initiatives encompassing the perspectives of artists, audiences, cultural organizations, and partners alike. And we are also joined by Mercedes Blackwood of Blackwood Coffee Communications, Black Coffee Communications. Mercedes is a brand clarity consultant specializing in helping organizations define and articulate their unique value proposition in a way that truly resonates with their target audiences. So through her brand consultancy with Black Coffee Communications, she translates insights into effective connection strategies and empowering organizations to move from the inspirational to the impactful. So welcome to you both, Aubrey and Mercedes, and thank you so much for joining us. To start us off, we will invite Aubrey in her role to share some context, where we're at as a sector in this period, especially given some of the news of the last couple of weeks, and underscoring why engaging in this type of work is especially important right now and through this summer. So Aubrey will join us here, and screens are up. Thanks, Aubrey.
Great, thanks, Shannon, and it's so great to be back here at Culture Days. So first off, I really want to say it is always a good time to engage your elected officials because they represent you. And the great news is that it is actually always much easier to start doing that kind of government relations when you have good news stories to share. And that is exactly what you as a Culture Days organizer has to offer, is a good news story. You're organizing free participatory activities in your community. Who doesn't love that? So you're starting from a really great position right now. Government relations is something that actually should happen all year round, in good times and in bad. And I recognize that outside of very large organizations that may have some dedicated staff for this, the rest of us are really doing government relations off the corner of our desks. So it can feel a little bit overwhelming and maybe intimidating, but we're going to get to some tools and resources that will help you. And just as a reason for why you should be doing this all year round is if you are doing government relations regularly when there is an election or a crisis, then you already have built those strong relationships with government officials. You'll know who to call, and they will know who you are, and they appreciate your organization's role in the community, which should mean that they should be more helpful at that moment. So summertime is a particularly great time to do government relations because members of parliament are in their local ridings. The House is not in session. So they can attend your events, they can meet with you locally. They might be having barbecues or community picnics and things like that that you can go to. And of course, at the very end of the summer into the fall, Culture Days is a fantastic opportunity to convey to members of parliament that the arts are happening locally, that they are really important to your local community. Regular citizens are excited by and participate in these things. So you are starting from a really strong position. So let's go to the next slide and talk about the current context. So we all know there was a spring election. We have a new government, new prime minister. The Liberals made promises in their election platform to be supportive of arts and culture, but they also made recent promises to very substantially increase the security and military spending while also bringing down the deficit. So that puts them in a very tight position. That brings us to just a couple of weeks ago when Minister Champagne, following the Prime Minister's orders, sent letters to every single minister and department instructing them to find 15% savings. How that breaks down is over 3 years. They are building up to 15%. In the first year, which will be the next fiscal year, 2026-27, they've been asked to find 7.5% in savings. The next year to find an additional 2.5%, bringing it to 10%. And then the following year to find an additional 5% to bring it to that 15% total. So this is cumulative over the 3 years and not 15% from the first year. The other thing that you should be aware of is that while it is cumulative over those 3 years, they are being asked to identify those savings now and provide a plan for 3 years in the next month, sharing that with the Treasury Board, and then there will be conversations back and forth, and those decisions will be made by next spring. So it is fairly quickly happening. Expect cuts to spending that have been promised for future years but have not yet been implemented. And while job cuts are on the table, there are no plans to make cuts in transfers to individuals or transfer to other governments. So what we are not going to see is cuts to employment insurance, old age security, disability supports, and things like that. So that leaves about 185 billion in direct program spending against which to apply the 15% cut. This implies the government intends to reduce program spending in 2029 by about 28 billion. All of the guidance is highlighting that programs that are going to be retained should be core to the federal mandate. And there was a mandate letter provided to all ministers. It's something that you can read, it's public. And in that mandate letter, there are 7 priority areas. And I think we'll share the link to that mandate letter in the chat. But really what those 7 priorities boil down to is 3 key words: economy, security, and sovereignty. That's what this government is really focusing on. And so far, we're seeing that really closely aligns with Canadians' priorities as well. Abacus data has been tracking public response to it and finding that Canadians are very much in line. It's a tight agenda that reflects national concerns and is relatively nonpartisan. The number 7 of those priorities is titled Spending Less on Government Operations, so that Canadians can invest more in the people and businesses that will build the strongest economy in the G7. So really this directive to find savings is pretty clearly demonstrating that priority. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. So what is the implication for the arts and culture sector? Well, unfortunately, every department will have some tough choices to make, and that includes Canadian Heritage and the Canada Council for the Arts. It's only been a couple weeks since this news has come out, and we don't know yet how they are going to make these decisions internally. We certainly can guess that discretionary initiatives like pilot programs, regional support programs, etc., will probably be more at risk. We also know, just based on the percentage of Canada Council's budget that goes into programs versus staff, that they can't solve this by simply cutting staff. They could try and cut 100% of their staff and they would still not reach the target of $54 million in savings that they have been asked to find. So I think we can surmise that there will be some kind of program cuts. Ministers are encouraged to reduce duplication across government, which could lead to some consolidation of programs or cuts to targeted cultural funding streams. Funding that lacks statutory or permanent status could be especially vulnerable. Many of Canadian Heritage programs have received top-up funding over the past few years. So when that top-up runs out, there's sort of a cliff that those programs are going to fall off. On the good news side, that might help them find that 15% savings without cutting permanent programs. Each minister will have 3 budget recommendations that they must make links to in the mandate letter, and so therefore the arts must strongly link our message to that mandate letter as well. Clearly, economic arguments are going to be critical. We need to demonstrate how the arts represent jobs in local communities and are a driver of Canada's economic growth. Mercedes is going to get into some of those economic impact stats later in this session. But there's also a strong case to be made for the arts' critical role in bolstering national identity, pride, and social cohesion, and thereby strengthening our sovereignty. And again, we're going to get into that a little bit later. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So this is our timeline right now. We're getting towards the end of July. August 1st is just around the corner. August 1st is the deadline for pre-budget submissions to the Standing Committee on Finance. Anyone can submit a written brief to the Standing Committee. I would not advise everybody to go and do that. It is, a fairly involved process. But it is something that a lot of the arts organizations that you might be connected with are doing. And in particular, the Canadian Arts Coalition. So if you want to have a say in that, I would suggest getting involved with the Canadian Arts Coalition. On a more simple level, August 28th is when the pre-budget survey by the Department of Finance Canada will close. That is a very easy survey and a way to have your say on budget priorities. I did it last week. It takes less than 5 minutes, mostly multiple choice about what you think are priorities for this government. But there is an open box, but I think with a limit of 250 words that you can write about whatever you want and what you think is a priority. I would strongly encourage everybody to write in there about the importance of arts and culture in our federal budget. Uh, because of the spring election, the timeline for the federal budget has shifted. Instead of a spring budget, we are going to have a fall 2025 budget. It is expected to be delivered in early to mid-October. And then they'll start working on the 2026 budget. What this all means is that from now until the end of September is our window of opportunity to engage your member of parliament and express your feelings about the importance of arts and culture and why we should be investing in it. The really important thing to keep in mind is that all politics are local. The more you can frame your message to your MP about what is happening in your local community, how cuts to arts funding might have an impact locally on the ground, the more that will have an impact for them. So strongly encourage you to talk about specifics of your organization and your community and how the arts play a role there. Okay, we're going to go to our final slide then. And so we know that doing government relations and advocacy can feel intimidating when you've never done it before, and that you may not know where to start. Identifying that gap or that challenge, Business Arts and Culture Days have joined forces on a project called Make the Case. It's still in development, but we've soft launched this website, makethecase.ca. And the purpose of the project is to demonstrate the ways arts and culture permeate all aspects of Canadian civic life and society, and to assist individuals and organizations such as yourself to make the case for increased support of the arts to decision makers and investors. There's 3 areas to explore on the site. The first is research. We've collected research from across Canada that helps to provide the context and the data that you need to make the case. Currently, we have 2 theme areas, but that is growing. As I said, this project is still in development. So the research areas will continue to expand. There are case studies that help you understand the particular story of making the case. We'd also want to hear from you of successful cases of advocacy. And then the third area is around action. This is helping you actually to do advocacy, to make the case. We have a number of resources and guides that'll guide you through that. In particular, I would point you in the direction of 2 guides. These each are 5 steps that'll help you to take some actions. The first one is 5 steps to write economic impact talking points. And the second is 5 steps to connecting local needs to federal issues. So this should be very helpful for getting started on connecting with your member of parliament and talking about the value of arts and culture locally. So I'm going to pass it back to Shannon right now.
Great, thank you so much, Aubrey. Back on screen here. Okay. Sorry, Fernanda, are you able to have me back on screen for?
Yes, let me check.
Thank you. Sorry, just having a bit of a technical issue. But you can hear me, so I will continue.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Aubrey. That is really useful information. We're going to connect what Aubrey has shared to how you can support these greater messages with Culture Days messaging and, again, engaging local officials to your events. So we're going to share some tips and strategies on how you can make that happen. But first, I'll just give a really brief overview for those who might be unfamiliar of what Culture Days is. So, Culture Days is Canada's annual celebration of arts, culture, and heritage. So, every year, the Culture Days celebration represents a coordinated effort to increase access, participation, and appreciation of arts and culture. So, thousands of free or pay what you may events happen all across the country this year from September 19th to October 12th. So, that's 3 weeks, again, in hundreds of communities across the country. So we invite you to join us. All events are offered by independent organizers as part of the celebrations. And last year, we welcomed over 5 million people engaging in Culture Days events, which is fantastic. The aim of Culture Days and all these associated events are to encourage the public to engage, to interact with, to discover or to rediscover the importance of arts and culture in their lives and communities, and to inspire them to continue their support of arts and culture organizations and artists year-round in their communities. So over the years, that sense of connection, that creativity and community has really grown into something special. Last year, we marked 15 years of Culture Days, and we have 15 years of incredible numbers reflecting what that's all added up to. So over 55,000 events, over 25 million people have been engaged all across the country. We encourage you to look through our highlights from 2024 that will be in the chat to discover more about last year's celebrations. So what we do at the National Office is we coordinate a national campaign with our partners. Just the next slide there, Fernanda. So this campaign really reflects that this is Canada's largest public participation campaign in support of arts, culture, and heritage. This is also, as Aubrey mentioned, especially this year, Culture Days is especially an opportunity to talk about the importance of artists and the arts and culture sector and why we should be vocal in promoting and protecting it. Engaging 5 million Canadians in this, or people across Canada in this event, is such a great opportunity to talk about those things. So we're going to give you some tips on how to do that as well. So through the work of these thousands of organizers, Culture Days also does reflect a current multi-level investment in Canada's social, economic, and cultural fabric. And it highlights the essential role that arts, culture, and heritage play in the vibrancy of our communities. So again, to Aubrey, what Aubrey was speaking to, we're going to pull out, we're talking about cultural sovereignty and national identities. Culture Days, it is quite an opportunity to be able to talk about that across the sector, investing and protecting in national arts, the national arts, culture, and heritage sectors, all the way down to the local levels, and really championing Canada's diversity and the vibrancy of our communities. So we hope that you, and using the resources that we're sharing today, can use our impact stats and the tools that we're pointing you to, especially to enhance your communications about raising public support, some future planning, volunteerism, and validating arts and culture's role in the communities as well. So one of the first resources we're going to point you folks to is a Culture Days key messaging guide. Now, this document, we're providing some basic information and then also some tips on how to talk about your events and tie them into these broader communications of support for the sector. So you'll find some key dates in this resource to keep in mind in terms of our own campaign deadlines and dates. Some general Culture Days campaign messages, and some kind of messaging options. Depending on what you are, your mandate of your organization, what you are trying to do with your Culture Days event this year, there's some different messaging that you can tap into, and we've provided some outlines on that. We've also provided some keywords and guiding themes. So those guiding themes are very connected to what we're talking about today and to what Aubrey was highlighting as important points to bring to your elected officials. And then we also, as you may know, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation falls within the Culture Days event timeline, and we are happy to support those events through Culture Days. There's a bit more information there regarding how that works. And we've also provided some visual key messaging and anchors, so some suggestions there, and a collection of stats and figures that you can also use. So on top of that, and what Aubrey has also shared and what we are talking about further in the session today, I also want to acknowledge that there are the subtle impacts. We're talking a lot about at the federal level, economic impact, larger numbers about social impact, but those local, personal, communal, connective experiences are really important to also share. So we do encourage you also to, at your Culture Days events, collect testimonials, really to reflect where arts and culture are affecting that day-to-day life in those small but really meaningful ways, so that you can share those messages during the events or after. So at this point in time, I'd love to invite Mercedes to join me as well. We're going to do an overview of some of the key impact areas that we've been talking about, and suggestions for messaging and directions to gather support for your events.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much, Shannon. So Aubrey set us up beautifully with the why and when in terms of a roadmap for advocacy. And I love the points that she brought up of, we've got good news to share. And so we are starting from a really strong point. And I want to remind you of that right off of the top, which is that Culture Days is so much more than just a wonderful celebration and event. It is a cultural phenomenon, and it is, in fact, a true representation of what we believe to be our identity. And as such, it has real value. And these are the things that we're going to talk about today in terms of what are those vital points that we can tap into to really help people to not only understand a Culture Days, but to also see its value and to want to get involved. So right off of the top, we have our favorite. And again, this goes with those mandates that Aubrey just shared with you of economy, security, and autonomy in terms of what are our political leaders thinking about and working on these days. And so economic recovery and growth and impact is, of course, incredibly important at this time. Stimulating the economy, local, municipal, federal growth is extremely important. It is driven by Culture Days through local spending, the support of cultural workers and venues. It enhances tourism and boosts local business. There are many, many wonderful stats and truths about Culture Days that really lend itself to economic recovery and growth, right, Shannon? We have quite a few great statistics that really drive those points home.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the work that some other organizations have been doing across the country, especially in these comparative. We'll note Hill Strategies estimating 3% of the Canadian GDP from the arts and culture sector in 2022 being roughly the same as the oil and gas extraction industries, and that the sector employs over 850,000 people. Again, a workforce larger than agriculture, forestry, and fisheries combined. That is really striking and meaningful. And we should be sharing these stats with folks, especially at the federal level, who are going to be caring about that. But it was also, encouraging. Oh, and I made a typo here. That's supposed to say the first quarter of 2025. So way more relevant. culture is estimated to account for 16.5 billion towards Canada's GDP.
Yeah, those are real numbers.
Great. Next slide, please.
So in terms of other areas where there's real impact and where messaging you can leverage in terms of engaging with advocates and stakeholders, is in the area of social cohesion and collaboration. You know, Culture Days carries enormous cultural impact, real tangible impact that has been shown over a stretch of 15 years. Remember that as well. We're not talking about some new event. This is a well-established and successful and impactful event. And so we want to talk about, when we are engaging, again, those officials who are, the care of an area is under them. We want to say, look, this is a wonderful way for us to build together as a community. We become more cohesive when we get out and get to know our neighbors, when we get involved, when we take our civic duty more seriously, and when we realize that it is a wonderful domino effect, that when you can engage at the local level, that certainly swells and equals enormous support nationally. And so connecting Canadians, connecting those of us who live here, both with emerging things and things that are well established, really, really create an impact over time that is significant in terms of what folks are worried about and thinking about these days.
Yeah, and as on the next screen, some of our own research speaks to these important areas of both behavioral change, but also some of those soft feelings that actually do build up to create real momentum and strengthen the communities. So we do have statistics on how people feel after they engage in local events during Culture Days at your events, increase in pride in their communities, in appreciation for arts and culture generally, but also overall sense of well-being, and likelihood to actually seek out more during the year. So there's those behavioral changes as well. Even their personal desire to be more creative and involve their children and families in arts and culture year round. So we're really proud of those local impacts we're able to pull out from audiences. And
Yes,
then, of
absolutely.
course, going next back to the national identity, we're able to see that at a larger scale as well, right?
Exactly. And those stats, more so than just being impressive in and of themselves, note this: it is very difficult to get people to act, isn't it? It's really, really difficult for people to hear something and actually do. Culture Days does that. And when we share and we lead with that truth when we're speaking to others, it really is quite an impactful message. Events and like Culture Days really help us to fortify our shared national identity. It makes that social impact and really, really fosters collective well-being. As we're talking today about engaging with government officials, of course, we have to think about what is the overarching sentiment right now. And it really is that we are strong, that we are unified, and that we have a future. And Culture Day certainly represents that. So using this as a way to show, again, the impact and the benefit of participating in and advocating for Culture Days it will be truly impactful for you.
Yeah, and certainly we've also, and just a reminder for everyone too, the way I see Culture Days, because it's an open event, an open framework for participation. These messages that we're talking about, these are relevant year round for all of the work that everyone is doing here. But to help support some of these arguments, we also do have our own research that we can pull from. Our most recent, we did a general population survey of people across Canada about just their feelings and perceptions of arts and culture. And so we found over 80% of the population we polled do believe that arts and culture enhance Canada's economy and quality of life while also making Canada unique. So much of what we're speaking to today, over 80% also agree that arts and culture unite Canadians and foster meaningful community engagement, that it asserts that the sector helps to build strong communities and create new opportunities. And they acknowledge that they promote cultural and social inclusion and articulate that arts and culture play a crucial role in educating children and fostering cultural awareness. So these are all statistics that are helpful when we're communicating, especially with elected officials or people who want to hear real numbers. So we're able to provide those as well. So I think next, Mercedes will also just, in terms of sort of using all this information and adjusting it to certain audiences, your recommendations and that sort of tailored messaging to different levels of government or community leaders we might be speaking to when engaging them this summer and fall.
Yes, absolutely. If you've ever heard me speak before, even on behalf of Culture Days, you've heard me talk about the audience and you've heard me talk about the importance of making sure people feel like that was for me. That was for me. Messaging is so much more effective when we feel like it resonates with us on a personal level. And so I always start with the reminder that no matter what kind of communication you're doing, whether it is advocacy to government officials or to the neighbor next door, it is a human being on the other end with their own motivations and priorities and goals. And the better you can align your messaging with those goals, with those motivations, you're far more likely your messages to land. And again, we talked about that prompting action, which is what we really want. So it helps when we're talking about government and the different levels of government, knowing that each of them has different priorities. It's helpful that depending on which contacts you're reaching out to, you tailor those messages so that it truly resonates with not only the contact, the main government official, but their staff as well, whom you have to get through first. And so we want to make sure that that message is clear so that everyone at every level who sees that request understands the value and keeps pushing it forward. So first, looking at the national level, we've just talked about that in a big way, which is it's all about unifying Canada and our global positioning. We want to show up as strong and together and unified. Culture Days and others in the arts and culture sector are huge contributors to the GDP. As we've seen some of the statistics, we have more available. These are not anecdotal. We have real numbers to back it up. And so feel free to draw on those kinds of statistics and sentiments when dealing with those at the national level, knowing that theirs is a broad and wide spectrum in terms of what their priorities are for the country. Now, going to the provincial level, we're looking at they're looking to cultivate provincial identity and economic recovery, right? It's about making sure that we as a province are strong, that we are meeting the needs of our constituents, but that we're also contributing to the larger goals of Canada and at the federal level. And so really they're concentrating both on developing a good and strong provincial and regional identity, tourism and economic recovery, while fostering the community and the cultural growth, but then also being able to take those things and demonstrate them to the federal level to show we are good stewards of the resources that we have. So if we keep moving to the next slide and getting into the municipal level, well, we are, and I love what Aubrey said earlier, which is it's always local. It really is always local. It begins here, right? These are our voices. These are our advocates to those who we don't have direct access to. And so these messages should be tailored to what they are worried about, which is, again, their local constituents, the health and well-being of their geographic area. What are the things that they are worried about? What are the things that they are campaigning on? What are the things that they promised? You should know those things and be able to touch on those points when you communicate. And we put in community partners and media here. And the reason is because these are other stakeholders who aren't participants, so not your public participants. Again, these are other groups of people who we must sometimes convey the value of Culture Days to, even though we're not talking about coming to our event specifically. So when working with potential community partners or others in your area who you're collecting with in order to boost your visibility as a whole, or when you are out doing outreach to media, really think in terms of amplification by collaboration. That is, I have something wonderful to share here in this local area, but did you know that we are part of this much larger phenomenon? And that getting involved with us on a local level is to get involved on a federal level, on a national level as well. And don't be afraid, again, to pull out those statistics, to pull out those sentiments that really show that, again, this isn't just a nice to have, but a really, really valuable event to get involved with. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Mercedes.
No problem.
Okay, so what we'd like to do now is also direct you to another collection of resources we've prepared for you as well. In particular, we're going to pull up on screen a template letter that we've worked on to provide to undertake an invitation to Culture Days events, or also to communicate the work of your own organization or yourself as an artist to your local MP. Now, again, this is broadly, we've designed this for MPs, but speaking to what Mercedes just went over, we hope that this could be adapted to many of your needs. And then, of course, pulling out relevant stats and information that we've gone over as well. So on the first page here, we'll keep our screen on there too, just for the outline. Again, this is designed for use of inviting a local MP to engage with or attend your Culture Days event. We have identified where you can find your member of parliament if you aren't aware who that is. We also encourage you to do a bit of research in terms of finding out your local MPs, what their election platform was, what their local priorities are, in being able to build that into this letter to appeal directly to them. So some instructions on how to use this too. But then we've also provided a collection of resources that we've referenced in this webinar as well within this template. And also just to preemptively answer one of the questions in the Q of A right now in terms of a united effort for advocacy. I think Aubrey mentioned it at the top, but I would also direct you to the work of the Canadian Arts Coalition. That's the first resource listed in this template. And they're also working very hard on pre-budget consultations and lots of those consultations and advocacy through the fall. So the rest of the template is for you to fill in. There's some information that only you can fill in. We've provided prompts for where you could include certain stats or information about your organization, what you've achieved in the last while that you want to share with your MP, why your organization is important to your local community. And then, of course, some suggestions on how to make them aware of Culture Days as, an upcoming way of participating and engaging in the work you're doing, and to ask them to attend. Now, I will note, just in terms of talking about timelines, such as Aubrey was talking about, we would highly recommend extending invites to your events sooner than later. I would say by August 8th would probably be ideal. And if they're unable to attend your events, which many may not be able to attend, you can also request a statement of welcome for them to include in promotional materials or press releases. We find those are really effective in getting people knowing about your event. So that resource is there for you, and let us know if you have any issues accessing it. If you are looking for specific information that we might have that can help you with, please feel free to get in touch with our team. I'll also just highlight while we're here what also is available to you within the rest of the drive. We have many ready-to-use and customizable messages and graphics and promotional materials that you can use. Many of our annual campaign assets are in there, some animations. We also do have a local request for mayoral declaration, so declaring Culture Days in the community. There's a template there as well. And of course, you know, if you've already registered events, you'll have access to your dashboard. You'll be able to see all of these resources made available to you there. And again, if you have any needs that we can assist you with, please feel free to reach out to us. So we have about 12 minutes left, enough time for a Q&A. We will invite Aubrey back to the session and Mercedes as well. So if anyone has any questions, we'll be taking them through the Q&A box. And I think I had one for Aubrey from myself. When I was listening to your part of the presentation, you kind of reviewed it already, but I think maybe I'd ask more directly. How do you think in this maybe moment of time, in this year, this context, you know, post or you know the pandemic began years ago, how would you, and acknowledging the priorities of the government, the federal government, and what's happened in the last few weeks, how would you more maybe broadly say the arts, culture, and heritage sector or organizers themselves, organizations are more uniquely positioned to contribute to these broader community priorities, economic development, well-being, equity?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now there's actually a refreshing sense of unity in the art sector. I'm seeing more unity in message than really we've seen for a long time. While of course there's always some differences of opinion, what best public policy goals to pursue, there does seem to be a really strong recognition that we need to speak with one voice. And what that means is rallying around a few major arguments about the benefits of arts and culture, namely the economic argument and the sort of social cohesion, national pride, and sense of self argument. Those two things really go very much hand in hand right now. Certainly seeing the Canadian Arts Coalition, as you mentioned too, being a leader of that voice, and everyone is welcome to take a look at their website and become a member. But also amongst the larger cultural organizations, most of those participate in the Canadian Arts Coalition that Business Arts organizes, and we convene them annually at an event. We had the Canadian Arts Coalition in April. We released a communique out of that also really spoke to those issues. And really at the gathering, I witnessed a renewed sense of purpose among arts leaders, that there was a recognition that this is a critical moment, but that arts and culture had something important to offer the country. It wasn't about us asking for funding. It was about saying, look, what we have is critical to the strength of our country right now.
Great. Yeah. And that communique Aubrey references from the Canadian Arts Summit is available in the letter template document as well. A question from the Q&A regarding, and this, Aubrey, you might help me out with this as well. So when we were talking about the impact stats slide, the Hill strategies that we referenced from 2022 when comparing the sector to the oil and gas resource sector, Hillary's asking, how do we back this up when people push back on it? Because it's probably unbelievable to most folks and as Hillary states, people just assume I don't know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the economy. And many people maybe outside of the art sector don't know what Hill Strategies is. So
Yeah.
Any ways to respond to that?
Well, first I would say Hill Strategies doesn't make up those numbers. Hill Strategies actually is just analyzing the data that is available through Stats Canada. And Stats Canada is our national agency of statistics and data in our country. So that is the most reputable source of data. And so, if you get pushed back on Hill Strategies, say, well, they've just analyzed StatsCan data. So that would be where I'd start. I think also if you can reference arguments being made by organizations outside of the arts for the value of arts. So for instance, in Ontario, the Ontario Chamber of Commerce released a report, I think only about 3 months ago. It might land with more reputation to some listeners when it's coming from a business source instead of the arts. Yes, of course, we're going to make the case about why the arts are important. We believe deeply in that. But if there's someone sort of from the outside who's also making that case, it carries more weight.
Yeah. Great. I guess on that note, have you, because you do so much advocacy directly with elected officials as well, have you noticed any shifts from your perspective in maybe their more willingness to be open to acknowledging the impacts of the arts and culture sector?
Yeah, I would say overall, I do find them quite receptive. And I meet with a variety of elected officials across the political spectrum. And you'd be surprised that even some that on the more conservative end are very receptive to these ideas. But often it's about putting it in your language, as Mercedes was talking about, making sure that you are speaking the language that your listener understands and framing it to their experience. So, I had a meeting more than a year ago with an MP from Alberta, someone you might not assume would be a huge champion of arts and culture. I went to his MP's website. He had a whole section that was attractions in his riding. 90% of those were arts and culture organizations. He framed them as tourist attractions. And that was the lens that he was seeing them through. But through my lens, they were all arts and culture organizations. So, when I went and talked to him, I used his language of tourist attractions and connected on that level.
Yeah, great. Fernanda, while we're still just answering a few questions, I might just ask you to put up the final slide so there's some contact information if people are looking to connect with us after this session. I had a question from Mercedes as well. We briefly touched on the media or constructing messages for media. I'm wondering if you have any insight on the general landscape right now. We know, earlier in the year there were all of those stories made in Canada, Canada's sovereignty. I mean, we all know arts and culture contribute greatly to that. But as we're thinking about our Culture Days events and making media aware, do you think still tying into some of those elements is useful and would, be appealing to those media outlets this year?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All of those sentiments are still very, very much trending. Made in Canada, strong Canada, unified Canada. So anytime that you can tap into those trending messages and sentiments as you're speaking, absolutely do so. Culture Days is Canadian and as I said, long established. And so there really are few excellent representations of a Canadian mosaic. And Culture Days is really one of them. And so do not be afraid to continue to lean in on those types of messages. They're still very, very relevant.
Great. Just a relevant question that just came up following that too is how might you make your community members who maybe aren't as involved in your organization, any just general tips? We will be covering this in a webinar coming up in August, which will share some information, but any general tips, Mercedes, that you found over the years for engaging those local audiences and what you're doing who maybe aren't attending your events year round?
Yeah, absolutely. So the key now is to start creating some momentum. So now, as Aubrey said, we've got this window. Well, it's a great window just in terms of getting people involved. So it's a great time to say over and over again, we're involved in Culture Days this year. Here's what we're doing. Here's how you can help. Here's how you can get involved. Or simply messages of look out for us, follow along, so that when Culture Day starts, you know what we're doing. And so continue to use all of this time. Sometimes it seems like it's maybe falling on deaf ears or it's too early. It really, really isn't. Start now, just again, slowly priming people to get ready to engage with you, not only during Culture Days, but leading up to, and then you have a better chance of them also continuing with you post Culture Days. So start now and build.
Great. Well, we've made really great time today. Aubrey or Mercedes, do you have any last reflections to share with the audience? I'll go into some of our just little wrap-up information, if not.
Just encourage everyone to just reach out to your MP, invite them, be welcoming, friendly. They're normal people, and you can connect with them, and they will probably be thrilled to learn about what you have going on in their local community.
Great.
Here. Go for it. Go for it. Yeah.
Well, thanks both of you for all your insights and a great session. And I'll say we nailed the timing there. So thank you. Just a reminder to everyone before you take off, event registration is open. If you have drafts, please push them to publish. We'd love to get your events published on the site. Remember, you don't need every single event or every single detail confirmed, just some of those primary event details. You can always update your event the closer we get to Culture Days. We highly recommend submitting your event sooner than later. Many of our provincial partners have local promotional deadlines coming up at the end of this month in particular. But again, the earlier you register these events, the more our teams and our provincial and territorial partners can promote those. Again, we have an upcoming webinar in August I'd like to draw your attention to. It's more about promoting your events directly, engaging the media, and using the tools that we provide through the system. You can access all the outreach materials we mentioned again through the marketing drive on our site. And we encourage you to follow us on social if you're not already doing so, and you will get a follow-up email with all of this information, all of the slides, and the templates and everything that was shared today within the next week. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your July.